Well, I cut out the patterns on the sides of the chest, the lower chest, yesterday, and then I cleaned it up with a spindle sander. Zoom in here, and you can see that's looking pretty good there. And then the front apron, I just cut it out again with a jigsaw here, and probably not too good to see with the bright sun in the background there, but I'm not finished cleaning it up. You can't get into those sharp curves there, so I'm using a file and rasp to clean it up. Here you can see right here it's still bumpy, so I've got this this is a bastard file. And then once I get the shape, then I use my finer files to take the grooves out. So we got a little bit more to do here and some more to do over there, but I think all in all it's just about done. Well, this is time to cut out the quarter column area out of the leg, and normally it's you remove the top block and cut all the way down here with today it would be with a table saw. I suppose in the old days they just used a straight saw, I guess, or I don't know what they used, or maybe just chopped it out with a chisel. So I've done this once before. I don't care for doing it on a table saw because the work is upside down, and you have to raise the blade up into it, and of course you cut out this end, and I think it adds some strength by leaving the piece on the top. So I've got a biscuit joiner here, an old one from back in the day when we used to use biscuits all the time, and it's set up to cut 1 inch deep. And now this, it'll make won't go quite 1 inch deep, but you can run it along there, and I've tested it out, so hopefully it stays nice and straight and won't damage my leg. So we'll give it a shot here and see how it goes. And that's a pretty straight edge there. Of course I'm going to have to chop out a little bit here and a little bit here. And then I'll just turn this over and cut the same on the other side, and then we'll finish it off with a chisel. Well, now that I cut both edges, as you can see here, this all has to be chiseled out, but the top and the bottom need to be cross cut. So we'll just use the old handsaw. Try to be straight about it. Very hot and humid here today. There's one done, and then we have to do the other end down here and then chop out between. So I'm chopping out the first of the legs here. You can see I made some saw marks going across to make it easier to chop it up. So I'm working here in the corner, and the work is a bit tedious, but I think if you're careful about it, that it's a better look. And this, leaving this piece in up here, I really do think adds a bit of strength to the leg. So a little unconventional. But if you like working with chisels, and as hot as it is today, then it gives me a chance to sit down and just meditate here while I chop out the remaining waste. And I did saw through here so that again it's nice and crisp. Even though very little of this shows, I mean only about a 1/16 of an inch on either side, but it's great to have a perfect line straight down there. Well, I've completed chopping out the first of the two areas for the quarter column in this particular, and it's come out pretty nice, I think. And then I remember I made a test quarter column, I think back in the second video, so it fits in there quite nice. So I'm pleased with the way that came out. So we've got a little work to do the other one. And of course, it wouldn't sit there. There'd be the capital, and the base has to go in when we make the good stuff. So one more to chop out. Well, I've reassembled the case here. As you can see, I've cut out the sides on the bottom, and then the apron on the front, and the quarter columns are cut out on the edges there. So I can either work on the interior with the drawer runners, and or shape the legs and carve the feet, which are the next steps. So I'll have to decide what I feel like doing next. Well, I've made some decisions today about how I'm going to attach the drawer runners, and I've decided I'm going to mortise them front and back rather than build a frame. So to get started, we got this contraption here to fit both the side of the large drawer and the runner for the smaller drawer on that side. And then so that's a butt joint, but then it'll be attached or glued to another piece here. So I didn't have thick enough stock to make it all from one piece, so I'm going to glue it up together, but I want to put the mortise in first. So then there's a mortise that goes in here, so that'll slide down in there, and the back will be mortised into the back. So I've got two mortises to cut here, and I'm going to do them by hand because setting up the hollow chisel mortiser isn't worth it for just these two small mortises there. So I'll be chopping them out by hand. I got the first one mortised in there, and wrong way, and it fits pretty good. So they eventually will have to be glued up, but I need to mortise the other one in, and then mortise it into the back. So I'm chopping out the mortise for the back, in the back, for this, which fits along here. So hopefully if I measured correctly, we'll have a good fit. This is a 9 5/16 mortise and mortising chisel Narnex. They're pretty good, although I don't cut that many hand mortises. This one should be good, and we'll test this out in a minute. All right, so I've put in a number of the drawer runners here. In the last video, I was assembling this one here, and it's of course mortised front and back into the face, and of course it's the most complex since it ends up being a drawer runner on this side, a divider, and a drawer runner on that side. Then I made the two smaller ones here less complex, so you have a runner and then a guide here. So that pretty much takes care of that row of 3 drawers. And then up here we have one large drawer. So I've got to put in a runner and a guide on either side up there, which would be identical to these two down here. And then kicker would go here and here to keep these drawers from tipping out. And then up here we've got to put in a piece here and on that side to help support the upper chest. So I've got a number of them to make. So that's what's the next step. Well, I've got all the lower drawer runners in and kickers. So it's looking pretty good. This of course is a dry fit, but there's only 2 pieces that I haven't put in yet, and that's the reinforcing blocks for the to hold the upper case in, and those would go in up here. And I'm not going to put those in until after I glue up the case. So other than that, I think the framing for the lower case is complete. So at this point we'll take it apart and start to work on the legs and the ball and claw feet.